Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I thought I would actually share this particular deck profile, given that it's pretty much getting close to that time of rotation, and by the time rotation actually hits, this particular deck will essentially be dead. So with that being said, I did want to showcase my deck itself just before that time comes, mainly to keep it as a document for myself, but to also just let everyone know what sort of list I was actually playing. But with that being said, before I get started, do drop a like if you like this video, subscribe if you want to see more videos, and just feel free to watch another video as well, because it definitely just helps out the channel a lot. But with that being said, hope you all enjoyed this one. Let's begin. Alright, well, starting off, we're going to be playing two copies of the Mew VMax as well as the Mew V. Now, this is definitely something that a lot of people might be a bit surprised about. I am only playing a 2-2 ratio of this particular engine here. Some people do actually go up to 3, and I've seen some decks that might even play up to 4 copies of each as well. I don't find it to be the absolute necessity to play this particular card. As a result, I am happy to keep it at the 2-2 ratio, and this is something that has really been working out for me quite a bit. And one of the things that I've been finding with this particular format is that VMaxes are just way too risky to actually play. Given that they do offer the opponent 3 prize cards, you don't really want to have too many out on the board just in case something might go wrong. Next up, I'm going to be playing 3 copies of the Fusion Strike Genesect V. So Genesect V is probably one of the best cards that has ever actually been released as a Fusion Strike card and within the entire E format. I mean, this card itself just allows you to draw so many cards, and it also just has a really amazing attack, which is what we essentially use our Mew VMax's attack with. But aside from that, it's also 190 HP, so it acts as a very nice body to sort of take a bit of the damage as you're setting up your board. So moving on with the single prizer Pokemon, we're going to be playing 2 copies here of Meloetta. Meloetta is definitely a really fun Pokemon to actually play, just because of the damage it could potentially do. Mind you, it only needs 2 energy to actually dish out any sort of damage. However, it does 70 damage for each of your Fusion Strikes out there. So if you have all 4 out, then you're essentially dealing 280 damage, knocking out a huge majority of the Pokemon out there with just a single prizer card like this. So definitely fantastic, definitely a very powerful card, and it has definitely caught off the opponent's guard quite a bit there, because in many situations you could attach a Fusion Strike energy and then you could just play Elisa Sparkle as well. It sort of like turbos your way out into dealing damage in the fastest way possible. But next up, we're also going to be playing 2 copies of Deoxys here. Now, one thing with Deoxys is that it is actually an optional card. You don't necessarily need to play it in this particular deck. So one thing you could potentially do is, if you feel like you need to increase the copies of the Mew Vs and VMaxes, then just feel free to take away the copies of Deoxys and add in 1 more copy each of the V and the Mew VMax as well. But that being said, Deoxys is still pretty decent to do a secondary attack if necessary. So dealing 120 damage most likely, it's still going to be, or actually no, 160 damage is definitely still well worth it for this particular deck. And the last of our cards we're playing is going to be the Oricorio. This is just going to be reducing the damage. It's purely just for that. Unfortunately, they do not stack, so we're just going to be playing the 1 copy. So moving on to supporter cards, we're going to be playing 1 Iono. I feel like this card is definitely a very mainstay staple in this particular format, and even in the upcoming format as well. So this card definitely playing at least the bare minimum 1 copy of. That being said, we're also playing a Fusion Strike deck, so I'm going to be playing 2 copies here of Elisa Sparkle. Definitely a fantastic card that allows you to really just turbo out your Fusion Strike energies. It's what pretty much makes this deck work. But you only need the 2 copies because she could be quite easy to draw into anyway. And we're going to be playing 2 copies here of Professor's Research as well. Definitely a fantastic card to turbo out your deck as much as you possibly can. Just does a very fantastic job at that. But that being said, because I'm also sort of maining the 2 Elisa Sparkle, I figured only 2 copies of Research would do the job. Most of my decks do play 4, but in this particular case 2 is definitely a really good choice there. I'm also going to be ending things off here on the supporters with 2 copies of Boss's Orders, just a great finisher for the actual deck itself. If you know what you're going to be knocking out to end the game, Boss's Orders is right there for you. So that's pretty much it for the supporters. Let's move on to the items. Alright, so with the items, we're going to begin by playing 4 copies here of our Power Tablet. Power Tablet is essentially allowing you to make up for the damage that you are currently lacking. So most of our damage is 210 or perhaps 280 with the Meloetta if you're really maxing things out there, or the 160 with the Eoxies. With having just an extra 30 damage, you could really push things up just well beyond that. So for example, let's say you're going for the max damage of Meloetta's attack being 280. Jumping it up by 30 puts it at 310, allowing you to knock off other Mew VMaxes. But that being said, if you play 2 Power Tablets, you can then keep stacking on more of these. So definitely really nice because it is something that sort of gets you really thinking about how you're making your plays. And that's sort of the fun about this particular deck, is that you do have to actually think about your choices and make the correct choices, because you don't want to just waste all your cards. Of course, there are a few exceptions to that, and that being the 4 copies of Battle VIP Pass. This card is just amazing to allow you to set up your board as quickly as possible, but of course it's only applicable in your first turn. So with that being said, you might end up with a few of these dead cards, so they act as great discard fodder for your Chromomatic. This card requires you to at least discard a card, but if you flip a coin and you guess it right, then you essentially get to search for any card from your deck. Moving on, to keep up with the consistency of our deck, we're going to be playing 4 copies of Ultra Ball here. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just discard the cards that you don't need anymore, but you could at least search for any Pokemon you actually want, and that includes Stage 1 Pokemon as well. So yeah, a great choice there. We're also playing 3 copies here of Lost Vacuum. This is just a really nice card to deal with certain cards that are quite annoying to deal with. Particularly Path to the Peak. Yes, I know that Path to the Peak will eventually be rotated out, but while it's still on right now, Lost Vacuum definitely does the job of actually getting rid of it. And next up, I'm also going to be playing here 2 copies of Featherball. Featherball just allows you to search for anything that has no retreat cost. In this case, both copies of Mew can essentially be searched out via the Featherball. So yeah, definitely very nice there to maintain the consistency in the deck. We're also going to be playing 2 copies here of Choice Belt. Again, just allowing you to deal more damage onto your opponents, and it's definitely very helpful in that regard. But I'm also going to be playing 2 copies here of Escape Rope, essentially acting very similarly to the Boss's Orders. And that essentially wraps it up with multi-copies of cards. No, I actually do have 2 more cards here, so that would be the Switch card, which is essentially like Escape Rope, but also allowing you to do a bit of a heal as well. So now I'm going to be moving on to 1 copy item cards, and that would be starting off with Fan of Waves. I felt like there was no need to play any more of that, but dealing with one particular special energy that the opponent might be playing out on the board is definitely very helpful, and if you don't need it, you could always just discard it anyway with the Chromomatic, or perhaps with even Professor's Research or the Ultra Ball. But next up, we're also playing here the Hisuian Heavy Ball. allowing you to essentially get an idea of what's actually in your prize card zone. And yeah, it's definitely very helpful because this particular card can essentially allow you to dictate what your gameplay would actually be, because you know what's in the actual prize zones. So if you know that both your Mew VMaxes are in the prize zones, then you know that your main strategy is going to be Meloettas. However, if say all of your Meloettas are in the prize zones, then you know that, oh, okay, maybe we'll focus on Mew to then deal damage via the Genesect attack. Next up, I got here Power Pad, just allowing you to recycle certain supporters. Sometimes you have multiple supporters, you do have to discard it, and with that being said, being able to recycle it with a Power Pad is definitely really handy. But we're of course also playing here a Forest Sealstone. Some people opt to play multiple copies of it. I find that one definitely does enough for the job here. I'm also going to be ending things off with one particular stadium card, and that's going to be Old Cemetery. Old Cemetery is a very nice card that allows you to deal just a little bit of tiny damage onto the opponent. It's very well worth it, but most importantly, it actually replaces the opponent's stadiums that they already have out on their board. Finally, we're going to be moving on to energies. I'm going to be playing 4 copies here of Fusion Strike Energy. I think this card is pretty self-explanatory. It is definitely one of the more crucial cards of the deck. I really don't have to say much else about it. I'm going to be playing 3 copies here of Double Turbo Energy. I thought about playing 4 at one point, but it just doesn't really work because it does reduce your damage by 20 if you're using it. But that being said, it is great to get as much energy on as possible if necessary. I'm going to be ending things off here with 2 copies of the regular Psychic Energy. Sometimes you might just need it, and it is definitely quite handy for the deck. But that being said, this is the whole deck profile itself, so I do hope you guys actually enjoyed this particular one. It is sad to see that the Mew VMax deck is going to be leaving the format soon, but that being said, a lot of people have definitely had a bit of complaints about this particular deck, that it's definitely been around for far too long and that it had to go. So I totally understand that, but at least it's been my favorite deck for so many formats now, and I now am struggling to find another alternate deck that I might be building. But with that being said, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a fantastic day. I'll see you all next time.